Good day. Jurassic Park was one of the great novels of the early 90s, and somehow it was turned into one of the greatest movies of the entire 90s. So here's the question, ladies and gentlemen. Which is better? Is it the book or the movie? Well, let's crack open this masterpiece of literature and find out.
Jurassic Park was written by Michael Crichton and released on November 20th of 1990. I first saw the movie in 1994 when it was released on VHS, and you better believe that I still have that VHS to this very day. In 2004, I finally read the novel. At the time, I was a huge bloody fan of the movie, and when I learned that it was based upon a book, I just had to get it. I still recall the day my grandfather and I went to get it from Barnes & Noble. I actually used an electronic mail to remind him that we just had to get the book after I got home from school, and I even addressed the mail to him like I was John Bloody Hammond. Hey, I was 15, I thought it was funny. We picked up the book and I tore through it in less than 3 days. I was floored by the bloody thing. I love the movie and now I love the book even more. It filled in a lot of gaps that the movie left open and expanded upon the characters in ways the movie didn't have time for, and for the longest time I thought the novel was superior to the movie, but upon reflection, I think the movie actually did the story a little bit better. A bold claim that requires bold evidence. The novel itself is more or less the same as the movie. Here's the gist of the story. In the late 20th century, a genetics company called International Genetics, aka InGen, is able to clone dinosaurs, and thus to make barge loads of cash, they decided to open up a theme park to showcase the dinosaurs for the paying public. The CEO of InGen, John Hammond, invites a bunch of experts to the park to show off his operation and the dinosaurs. Due to internal sabotage by a disgruntled employee, the fences go down and dinosaurs escape. The experts have to survive and eventually escape the island. The movie and the novel tell the same basic story, and many of the scenes and plot beats are the same between the two, although the characters will act quite a bit differently from the movie, and many of the scenes are either in different places or have a different context in the novel. For example, the famous T-Rex chase is different in the novel versus the movie. In the movie, you have the T-Rex attempt to chase down Robert Muldoon, Ellie Sattler, and Ian Malcolm. In the book, the T-Rex only tries to chase down Robert Muldoon and Donald Gennaro, the lawyer character. The same basic thing happens, but the reasons are different. The main events of the book take place in the year 1989, and the novel begins with them having already happened, and the entire story is a bit of a tell-all by the survivors. The novel is written in the third-person perspective with an omniscient narrator and features the viewpoints of a few major characters, and there are several plot lines going on at the same time. Pretty much all the characters in the novel are the ones that we saw in the movie. We've got Alan Grant, Ellie Sattler, Ian Malcolm, John Hammond, Donald Gennaro, Robert Muldoon, Tim and Alexis Murphy, Dennis Nedry, and finally the novel has one character that shows up only in it, Ed Regis. Alan Grant is quite a bit different from the movie. He is still a hard-charging scientist character and is still a heroic character, but he has a beard and is described as being a barrel-chested bruiser. In the movie, he started out hating kids, but in the novel, he already loves kids and was originally married, but his wife died from cancer. He is probably the nicest character in the novel, but he is not quite as nice as his movie counterpart. And at one point in the novel, he, molests an infant raptor. And no, that is not an exaggeration. He really causes the poor beast some distress, and it really seems out of character for him. Ellie Sattler is pretty much the same, although she's a little less friendly. In the novel, she is supposed to marry a doctor, hence why in the movies, Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler don't hook up until those Jurassic World abominations. We learn that Ian Malcolm is from Texas, which is really awesome. What's not so awesome is that he lacks all of the charm he had in the movie. Crichton makes him really preachy and a bit of an asshole, and he goes on whole rants and screeds about how evil science is. He has a point, but he also shows his ignorance about the progression of technology. In the novel, it is implied that he died, but well, that gets ignored in all later works. I get why he could be killed off, as sometimes he gets really bloody grating. John Hammond is a major departure from the movie. In the film, he's played as a kindly old man that just wants to show children the wonder of the dinosaurs. In the novel, he is an evil, cynical old man that is fond of saying, "Oh, balls," when things don't go his way. He is the meanest of the characters in the novel, and I'm really glad he got changed for the movie. Donald Gennaro is the lawyer, and in the movie he is a coward, but in the book, he has balls and a will to fight when needed, and is a great accompaniment to Grant's badassery. He survives in the novel. Robert Muldoon is the game warden and is more or less the same as he is in the movie, but when things start going pear-shaped, he takes a few swigs from his hip flask. He survives the events of the novel. Tim and Alexis Murphy have been inverted and slightly changed. Tim is now 12 years old and Lex is 7, whereas in the movie they were more or less the same age. Tim now is a dino and computer guy, and Lex is, well, a 7-year-old girl that likes sports. But her character could be worse, and she does have a lot of inner strength and does not do anything cowardly in the novel. Dennis Nedry is described as a sloppy college kid, legit, but not a Wayne Knight plumpy boy. He is more or less the same as the movie, but here he is kind of justified in that Hammond, the cheap bastard, wanted Nedry to do modifications to the Jurassic Park computer system for free. And when he refused to do this for free, Hammond tried to do the 1980s equivalent of canceling him by calling up all the tech companies and telling lies about him. Nedry is the one that kind of gets the ball rolling in the downfall of Jurassic Park, and like in the movie, he dies, but this time he gets his head chomped. Lastly, we got Ed Regis. He is a public relations dude, and he is more or less what Donald Gennaro is in the movie, and he gets chomped by the juvenile T-Rex. So with our cast of characters in place, it's time to enter the world of Jurassic Park. The novel opens with some background on genetics technology and how it will be the most lucrative piece of technology in the world. This kind of happened in our world, but instead of dinos, we got the Human Genome Project. This segment of the novel is very pre-innocent. The novel kind of predicts what the dot-com and microelectronics boom of the 90s and 2000s would do to society. The first bit of the book is a bit of a slow burn. The movie really gets the ball rolling by having a raptor chomp somebody. A raptor chomps somebody early in the novel as well, but then it goes on a tangent about a random green lizard attacking people. The lion's share of the novel does indeed take place in Jurassic Park, and that's where the issues start up. Now, the movie showed lush scenes of green landscapes. The novel describes Isla Nublar, the location of Jurassic Park, as being shrouded in fog most of the time. We have similar scenes of Grant and co seeing the Brachiosaur, but it's not really focused on. The kids show up the same time in the novel as they did in the movie, but for way different reasons. And Hammond wants to use them pretty much as human shields for his park. Gennaro is pissed that Hammond would bring kids to an untested park. The trip out into the park is very different from the movie in that they see dinosaurs, which makes the scene with the sick dino less impactful. Dennis Nedry eventually does his thing and shuts down the park's security system to steal the dino embryos so he can get a big payout from InGen's rival, Biosyn. By shutting down the security system to get to the embryos, he also shuts down the dino fences, and as you might imagine, chaos theory ensues! This novel is not really about dinosaurs. Oh, that's what got you to buy the book! But would you believe the novel is actually about the inability of humans to manage complex systems? Sounds boring, right? But Crichton writes it in such a way that you focus on the dinos and not the main message, but your brain, as Red Letter Media would say, does notice that. Jurassic Park really was doomed from the start. Dennis was only the shit bastard that kicked down the whole rotten edifice. First, John Hammond in the book is a proto-tech bro. He doesn't understand the technology, but he sees big fat stacks, so he wants to invest in it. In the movie, John Hammond talks about his flea circus, and it's all wonderful and nice. In the book, John Hammond has a scientist create a tiny elephant to show what genetic technology can do, even though the elephant wasn't actually created with genetic engineering and could never be replicated, and the scientist who made it died. Oops. Next, Henry Wu in the novel barely understands the dinosaurs at all, and he only just kind of makes them work. Next, we've got an example of corporate overreach. Instead of breeding a couple dinosaurs and learning how they act in captivity, and then doing a pilot project with reasonable goals, and then learning how to care for dinosaurs and how to keep them in captivity over time and learning how to make a system to manage all that, they just make a park with hundreds of dinos and they don't pay their software engineer, and that really seems legit to real life. When Jurassic Park is built, they have no idea how anything is supposed to work. The dinos are smart smarter and faster and tougher than they thought, and thus are more dangerous than they anticipated. The computer system they commissioned was very ambitious for the 1980s, and likely couldn't have existed in real life. It was done by one guy's team, and he wasn't paid, so it was, in short, jank as fuck. They had one major software engineer and troubleshooter, John Arnold, aka Samuel L. Jackson, and he was overworked as fuck too. The system had so many faults it wasn't even funny, and it was programmed so stupidly it has to be read to be believed. With everyone so overworked, no one had time to think and come up with contingencies or even standard operating procedures. Before Nedry does anything, Jurassic Park is already screwed in a shit ton of different ways. During the dino tour, Ian Malcolm asked a few questions about how the dinosaurs were counted. There are cameras and motion sensors around the park. They scan for the dinos, and then the computer tabulates how many dinosaurs the sensors see. Sound cool, right? There should only be a set number of dinos due to genetic engineering. See, they're all supposed to be female, and they're also supposed to be sterile due to being irradiated. And due to this, the computer only counts up to the set number, and not past that, because there's not supposed to be any more, right? And so before the tour is even over, Malcolm asks them to have the computer count to a higher number. Uh-oh, the dinos were breeding all along. Oops. And Henry Wu didn't even know how the dinos could breed because he didn't remember that he was splicing in frog DNA and didn't know that sometimes frog could change sex. Oops. So there was no way Jurassic Park was ever going to bloody well work with this system setup. And so it's a good thing it failed now, because imagine if it was filled with tourists. So the power goes out just like it does in the movie. The T-Rex escape just like in the movie. And this T-Rex escape is still scary, but our heroes in the novel just watch as the T-Rex destroys the car with the kids in it. And they never do anything to help. Ian Malcolm gets injured as well, but not because he was trying to distract the T-Rex. Oh no, he was just legging it. Much like the movie, Grant does eventually help the kids. The park, unlike with the movie, has a staff, and eventually they start to get the park back into order. Grant and the kids go through some harrowing adventures in the park, kind of like they did in the movie, but there's just more of it here. The T-Rex is a bloody dick and keeps trying to kill and eat Grant and the kids. The juvenile T-Rex is a chill dude and only ever eats Ed Regis, although the novel does make him a sympathetic character, and you don't really want to see him get chomped unlike Gennaro in the movie. Grant and the kids eventually use a local river to try and get back to the main compound, and that T-Rex keeps trying to kill them. Eventually, Grant and co fall off a waterfall and escape behind it. Grant gets separated, and the T-Rex tries to use his hentai tongue to eat poor Tim. But just in time, a tranquilizer rocket that Muldoon shot the T-Rex with earlier in the novel takes effect, and the T-Rex falls unconscious and eventually drowns. Serves that bastard right. Seems like everything is going to go back to normal. And then the waterfall stops. The power then goes out all over again because they were on aux power all this time and they just ran out of gas. Oops. They had to turn the system off to purge Nedry's porn program, and when the system came back on, it was set to aux power. Because remember, no one planned anything on that fucking island, and John Arnold, the one tech guy, forgot because he's doing a shit ton of other things. With the power off again, all hell breaks loose. Again, the raptors start killing everyone. Gennaro and Muldoon try and blast a few raptors and get a couple, but wouldn't you know it, they only had a couple shells for their rocket launcher. Design on disaster, am I right? Sattler, Malcolm, Hammond, and a few others hold up in an armored lodge, but the raptors start biting through the bars because no one knew what their bite strength was. Oops. Grant and the kids, after going through a tunnel beneath the waterfall, get back into contact with the rest of the cast. He is the only one who can get to the control room to turn the power back on. Ellie in the novel is used as bait to draw the raptors away from Grant. The kids eventually have to fight a raptor as well, and the scene is more or less the same as in the movie. Henry Wu buys it thanks to a raptor. No bloody Jurassic World for us. Grant, being a badass, gets to take down 3 raptors with chemical warfare. Now, at the climax, we have another problem. All the computer guys buy it. And well, Grant, he's not really good on the whole tech thing. Whenever he looks at a hard drive icon, he thinks it's a record player. So they're pretty lucky when it turns out that the kid, Tim Murphy, actually knows how to use one of those computers. What's kind of interesting about the computers here is that there is a touchscreen monitor that is used to control the computer system. As an aside, Hammond spared a lot of expense in some places, but not in others. There is no need for a touchscreen monitor in that goddamn control room. That is in no way a help for a bloody software engineer who should be using a bloody keyboard. Tim Murphy gets his time to shine, unlike in the movie where it was his older sister, Alexis Murphy, who was actually using an even more unnecessarily complicated computer system, which had a bunch of GUI elements that looked cool in a movie, but, well, Hammond, maybe you should have spent more money on, the park instead of stuff that doesn't really mean anything. Thankfully, due to Tim Murphy's nerdiness, the park is powered back up, and sadly, unlike in the movie, we get no epic climax. No T-Rex busting in and taking names. The novel just sort of ends, and it's a pretty big anticlimax. Hammond dies in the novel in a really nasty and pretty mean-spirited way. After everything's starting to get back to normal, Lex and Tim are playing around on the computer, and they accidentally play a T-Rex roar. Hammond runs from it and falls down a hill and sprains his ankle and then is eaten by compies. Yeah, I get that Hammond was a little shit and was certainly not a good guy, but did he really need to go out that way? And Mikey, did you have to have his own grandkids accidentally kill him? Yeesh. And if you think that's bad, the dinos get firebombed. Come on, Mike. You really hate sequels that much? I mean, come on. I get that they couldn't have established an equilibrium, but did you really need to torch the reason why we bought the book? The novel ends with Grant and company being held in house arrest pending investigation. The end. Ooh boy. That book was still good, but man, that ending. Yeah, I can see why they changed it. This novel, though, despite all my complaints, is still amazing. The characters are entertaining, the premise is entertaining. The fact that this novel is about way more than dinos is cool. I like the whole angle about how humans cannot handle complex systems and that people with more greed than brains can lead humanity to disaster. The novel does get a little preachy here and there, but by and large, Mike did have a point. A point that no one will listen to, but a point nonetheless. It's kind of funny that the whole point of the novel has been completely forgotten and people just think of my dinosaurs, kind of like how Godzilla was supposed to be a symbol of nuclear war, but now he's just a big stompy lovable lizard. And you know what? I don't give a shit. Dinos are cool. This book, of course, became extraordinarily popular, and even though the movie became even more popular, people still remember that this book exists. Now, we got a bunch of sequels to Jurassic Park, the movie, but Crichton himself only ever wrote one novel to follow up on Jurassic Park. The novel was entitled just Lost World, which would be kind of confusing because there's been a lot of Lost Worlds with dinosaurs. This novel would release in 1995 and would be alright, if a bit slow. It's kind of like the movie Lost World Jurassic Park, but lacks the cool InGen mercenaries in the T-Rex rampage. I'm not sure I really recommend it, as it doesn't really add that much to the Jurassic Park franchise, really. If you're a super big Jurassic Park fan, I guess read it, but don't expect to be impressed all that much. Jurassic Park the movie would get a really obscure sequel in the guise of comics from Topps. This series incorporated both film and novel continuity to tell some pretty compelling stories that would later be hacked apart into those god-awful Jurassic World movies. The comic series got cancelled before the plot could really get going. It brought back all the fan favorites, and somehow Muldoon survived. Man, who wasn't cloned on Biss? Our heroes have to face dinosaurs, drug lords, hey, it was the 90s, Biosyn, and the comics start to get a cool little cyberpunk story going on. Really, the corporate angle was the best method for sequelizing the Jurassic Park series, as the dinos can only do so much. So yeah, watch the movie, read the book. I am General Lotz, wishing you good Starship Troopers and good Jaws, or whatever makes you happy.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and please consider leaving a like or a comment, as the algorithm desires your soul. And I want to thank all those fans who have supported this channel, both past and present.